The losing streak isn't over just yet. On today's episode, I'll recap everything that happened in the Stars versus Winnipeg Jets game. A lot of good happened from this game, despite Dallas falling just short and losing in a shootout. They do salvage 1 point, but today we'll run through all the good things that happened, the bad things that happened, and talk about how the Stars can be prepared for their next two games on this Canadian road trip. It's a midweek edition of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis. It is Wednesday, November 3rd, and it's a little bit of a somber Wednesday. This game against Winnipeg was weird. I will say that. I don't feel as disappointed and as empty and as sad as I felt again after the games against Vegas and Ottawa. Obviously, you want to see Dallas win this game, but it's just kind of some initial thoughts before we dive into the ultimate breakdown of this game. You know, I feel like especially last Wednesday, against the Vegas Golden Knights, the Dallas Stars were winning, and they deserved to win that game even though they lost. And tonight, Dallas loses, even though I feel like they maybe deserve to win based on how they played at the end of the game. But we are moments away from jumping into a full breakdown of last night's game. But before we do that, I want to say thank you for stopping by today's episode of Locked On Stars. Whether you are a first-time listener or you are a recurring listener, thank you for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast at. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Huge milestone cross last night. We did cross above 50 subscribers on the Locked On Stars YouTube channel. So thank you guys for that. Thank you guys for the support over there on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed there yet, go ahead and do that. Run over to YouTube, search Locked On Stars, hit subscribe. It's absolutely free and it helps this show grow. That's something that I want to continue to see. It's been fun to see in my short time as host so far. That's a credit to you guys. So thank you guys for the support of the show and of the YouTube channel so far. But without any further hesitation, let's get into a breakdown of last night's shootout loss to the Winnipeg Jets. I think the biggest takeaway from this game, one, there's a lot of good things that can be taken away, but I think overall you have to look at the effort that was shown by Dallas, especially in the third period. It was unlike any third period or maybe any period in general that I've seen from Dallas this season. I won't outright say it's the best period we've seen from them, but it was one of the better ones we've seen. Dallas may have only come away with 1 point last night, which is disappointing, but I think they earned that point. And I think any point that you can get, especially in a Central Division matchup this season, is going to be valuable. Again, this is a long season, still a lot of hockey left to be played, but this 1 point, is as sad as it might seem that Dallas only comes away with one. I think some could make the argument, and it would be fair, that maybe they shouldn't have come away with any. But they did. They fought, and they earned that 1 point, even though we would have loved to see them get two. Like I said, so much fight and grit to get back in this game, being down 3-1 going into the third period to, they end up tying it, forcing overtime. And then, overtime period was a little questionable, and we'll get to that a little later. But ultimately, they did what they needed to do to put themselves in a position to win the game. And Dallas didn't get a power play opportunity until, middle of the third period. And we talked on yesterday's show, whenever I was talking with Harrison Lee of Locked On Jets, talking about how bad the Jets penalty kill has been this season. How that was something Dallas could capitalize on or look to capitalize on. And they did just that, in the middle of the third period to get their second goal of the night. Jason Robertson fights through the traffic in front of the net. A lot of, chaos happening in that area on the power play. And he fights through, gets control of the puck and forces it into the crease. And it was really, really nice to see. He puts his name on the score sheet for the first time this season. He puts the Dallas Stars back into the game, only down one with a little over 10 minutes left. And that's a lot of time to work with when you only need one goal to tie the game or win the game. And of course, just moments later, John Klingberg hits Jansen Harkins with a little Texas two-step, if you will. He's been watching some Luka Doncic highlights because he broke Jansen Harkins. He went tumbling down to the ice. It was an incredible play. He launched a shot that, until I was writing the rundown for the show, I didn't know that the shot bounced off Tyler Seguin. Maybe they said it on the broadcast and I missed it, or the highlight angles that I saw afterwards And even during the game, I didn't necessarily see it hit Tyler. But the websites I checked, ESPN and NHL.com, both credit the goal to Tyler Seguin. But John Klingberg, definitely the maker of that play. Great play by Klingberg and great play by Tyler to be in position to have that ricochet in. Nonetheless, regardless of who scored it, that ties the game, and that puts the momentum in Dallas's favor. Momentum was something that Dallas was chasing the entire game, and then they finally got it in the third period in the most pivotal moment of the game. And so they played imperfect, but they played with a lot of heart and a lot of energy. And I think, as coaches and as fans, and, especially as fans, that's something that we can be encouraged by. They did what they had to do in order to put themselves in the best position to win. Unfortunately, they could not come away with the win. But I don't think it's a credit to them playing poorly or making mistakes down the stretch. For the most part, overtime was a little lopsided, which we'll talk about a little later as well. Dallas barely had the puck, if at all, in overtime, especially I think the first 3.5 minutes. I don't even know if they really had the puck in their offensive zone besides maybe sending it in there to get a substitution because guys had been on the ice for way, way too long. But, they did just enough to get by there and, came up big to force the shootout. It felt like the overtime period was dominated by Winnipeg, yet they didn't falter a goal. They bent, but they did not break. And unfortunately, the game just came down to one shootout shot, and Dallas couldn't execute there. Winnipeg did, and Dallas only comes away with 1 point. Would have been nice to see them come away with 2. But, man, they fought back. They fought hard and earned that at least 1 point. And I think that, there's things that they can build off of going into this next game against the Calgary Flames. But we'll touch on that a little bit later at the end of today's episode. Before we move on to the next talking point, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that can be fixed, some of the negatives, the things I didn't necessarily like from last night's game. But before we do all that, I want to take a moment and say thank you to some of the sponsors of today's episode. The first of those being Shopify. In case you don't know, Shopify is a complete commerce platform that lets you start, grow, and manage a business. The subscription-based software allows anyone to set up an online store and sell their products. Shopify store owners can also sell in physical location using Shopify POS, our point-of-sale app, and accompanying hardware. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big businesses, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronized online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnhl, all lowercase there, all one word, lockedonnhl, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnhl right now. Again, that's shopify.com/lockedonnhl, all one word, all lowercase. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. I absolutely love Thanksgiving, all of the good food and treats and plenty of those things to go around. But maybe you want a yummy dessert, but maybe a dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugars. Sounds like the perfect time for a Built Bar. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. You heard it here first. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert of Thanksgiving this year. Make it happen. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories. And that's on the low end most times. But most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only contain 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. So replace that coconut cream pie with a coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace for any slice of pie. And be sure to share some at your family gatherings. You're going to have that one relative that that all they talk about while they're in line getting food, getting seconds and thirds, is how bad they've been and how they need to lose weight. And how that, they're going to go on and on. You can share your Built Bar with them and say, hey, this is a little bit of a healthier dessert option. Still has that great sweet taste, but it's better for you with less calories and less sugar. You can go to built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Moving on to the next segment of today's episode of Locked On Stars, your first listen of the day. I want to take a moment. We talked a lot about the good things that we saw from last night's game in Winnipeg, and there were quite a few good things to take away from this game. But of course, just like any other hockey game that we're going to see this season, this game was imperfect on Dallas's end, especially. And there was really 2 guys that played fine through some parts of the game, but ultimately want to see a little bit more of, especially in the next few games. And the first of those being a guy that's been pretty solid until as of late, and that is Braden Holtby. And Braden Holtby looked very, very shaky and maybe his worst game of the season last night in Winnipeg. I think I've made that claim maybe a few other times, but maybe also tried to take a little bit of the weight off his back, and say, his defense isn't helping him out and his offense isn't scoring goals. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case tonight, maybe in a few instances, but I just don't think he was seeing the puck very well. I mean, he just looked kind of slow and a step behind on a lot of the goals that were scored on him. I don't know. It just looked like I think all of them could have been prevented. And he, like I said, just looked a little bit slow and looked a little bit out of touch, maybe out of the zone. If you look at the first goal that was scored by Paul Stastny, if you look, I think for sure on NHL.com's website, if you watch the highlight, on the very last angle they show is above. It's an aerial angle. And you can see, it bounces off the puck, it gets sent in, bounces off Paul Stastny's head, which is a weird play, and that's a hard play to read. But if you look, Braden Holtby does kind of lunge at it, and there's an opportunity for him to grab it with his glove, and he just misses it. I truly think he could have gotten it. And again, that's a hard play to read. But man, if you're a goalie, especially a goalie of his pedigree, who's had some really, really nice, successful seasons, and a guy that's looking to reassert himself as one of the best goalies in the league, and he's done that some games this season. That's just a play you have to make. I know it's hard, it's challenging, it's a play that the average person probably can't make, but a guy like Braden Holtby, who has experience and veteran experience, you got to make that play. It's a weird play to make, but you got to make it. You absolutely have to make that play, especially in a game as close as this, where every goal counted and there was some questionable goals that were challenged, overturned. Just a play that you have to make. Goal number 2 from Josh Morrissey on the power play, as was goal number 3, which we'll talk about in a second. This was maybe the one goal that maybe you let Braden Holtby off the hook because it was a power play and not necessarily anything weird happened. He just kind of made a bad read on the puck. It looked like he was kind of moving down and in towards the goal, and it goes over his shoulder and behind him into the net off a one-timer from Josh Morrissey. Just kind of made a bad read again. At me, average Joe, talking as if I can just save a one-timer goal after playing, a period and a half of hockey and then having to be on guard on the power play. But again, just like a guy like Braden Holtby, who, the pedigree that he is, the goalie that we know he can be, that's just a play that you have to make. And it's just unfortunate that goal went in, and then, Dallas almost tied it back up at 2 after that. But, the goal from Rupe Hintz gets called back, which was unfortunate. An unfortunate swing in the game as far as momentum. And then goal number 3 was a rebound off Holtby that he just failed to bring in. We talked a little bit, I think a few weeks ago, someone in a mailbag question, or just maybe a question on Twitter, asked if it was a concern for Braden Holtby with all the rebounds that were bouncing off of him this season, whether they were going in or not. And if you go back and look at goal number 3, I believe it was, I can't remember who scored it off the top of my head, but you can go find it in the highlights of last night's game. It was just a bad rebound that Braden Holtby could have brought in, but did not. Again, play that could have been prevented, a play that a guy like Braden Holtby needs to make. And so I don't want to peg this entire game on Braden Holtby, because it certainly was not all his fault. But he definitely fell short in a few moments. And I will say, after that goal that he gave up, after the rebound, he cleaned up his act quite a bit, and he came up big down the stretch in the third period and in overtime. Obviously fell a little short in the shootout. And I wasn't a huge fan of the way he defended the last shootout goal. I can't remember who was on, who shot the puck for Winnipeg on that very last one. I wasn't a huge fan of the way he defended the net there. I know it's a little bit different than obviously like a breakaway or in a regular, first, second, third period hockey game. But I feel like he just could have defended the last one a little better. So don't want to peg it all on him. But Braden Holtby definitely left a lot to be desired on the ice tonight. Jason Robertson, another guy that, even though he came up big with the second goal of the night for Dallas on the power play, he committed 2 big penalties that in turn resulted in big things for Winnipeg. The first of those being their first power play goal of the night, their second goal of the night, that one-timer from Josh Morrissey that I mentioned. Excuse me. Jason Robertson commits a roughing penalty that allows Winnipeg to go on the power play, that allows Winnipeg to take the 2-1 lead, with which they were able to build a good amount of momentum on and eventually make that a 3-1 lead. So that was a mistake. And then the second one, maybe not as costly on the scoreboard, but very costly overall. Dallas was on their second power play of the night. And I believe this was after the game was tied. So it was 3-3. Dallas is on the power play with about a little over a minute left, maybe like 72 seconds left in the power play. He commits another penalty that allows the game to go to 4-on-4, and then eventually causes another Winnipeg power play, which Winnipeg did not capitalize on. But it was just a bad play by Jason Robertson that took Dallas off the power play. And the power play had proven to be effective earlier in that period. And so just unfortunate. I don't think penalties should be too big an issue for Jason Robertson moving forward. He's a young guy. He missed the first 2 games of the season, and he's wanting to, make an impact on the game for his team, which is understandable. And he's, he needs to be that guy. I think the Dallas fans, coaches, his teammates want to see Jason Robertson get involved and make big plays, but he needs to be disciplined. And as is the case with most young athletes in any sport, you see a lot of fouls, a lot of turnovers, a lot of silly mental mistakes. And I just think that is the case of what we saw with Jason Robertson tonight. He's looking to reestablish himself as a force on this Dallas team. And I just think he made some mistakes, and these mistakes, sometimes they end up costing your team and sometimes they don't. And tonight they most certainly did. Who knows if Dallas would have converted on that power play that they were on that eventually turned into a 4-on-4. But I mean, they still had a lot of time left. Like I said, about 70 seconds to still make something happen. Maybe they take the lead, they win in regulation. And this night goes a little differently, but we'll never know. But ultimately, we'd like to see Jason Robertson clean up his act a little bit better. And the last thing that kind of that I wasn't a huge fan of, that I don't think many of us were probably a huge fan of, was the way that Dallas played in overtime. They just had trouble securing the puck, having possession of the puck. And it just felt like Winnipeg was in control the entire time. And they're very lucky to have even gotten to a shootout. Dallas is. It was just kind of weird. It seems like they were playing to not lose rather than playing to win. Which in overtime doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because it's like if you make a mistake, which it's easier to make a mistake in 3-on-3 play where you let a guy have some fast breaks down the ice, which Winnipeg had a few of those opportunities and Braden Holtby came up big. But I feel like in overtime, it's like if you're going to lose, you're going to get a point anyway. Even if you force the shootout and you lose, you're going to get a point anyway. So why not risk it? I feel like Dallas was just playing a little too safe, a little too conservative, especially given how much they had been aggressive and shown a lot of fight to get back into the game. And throughout the third period, just felt very odd, felt very uncharacteristic, if you ask me. Would have liked to see a little bit more of that fight that we saw in the third and the overtime period, but it just kind of felt like Dallas was playing, like I said, to not lose rather than to win. So hopefully next time we're in overtime, which with our luck will probably be Thursday night in Calgary, hopefully we'll see a little bit different effort, a little bit different result in the overtime shifts, because I think, that maybe played a huge factor into how the rest of the game went in the shootout period. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Stars, I want to talk a little bit about maybe what the early theme has been established as for this Canadian road trip for the Dallas Stars. But before we do that, I want to say thank you to another sponsor of today's episode, and that is BetOnline. BetOnline is back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, postseason baseball, at the time of recording this, the Braves just won the World Series, by the way, but that's irrelevant. Postseason baseball, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. To close out today's episode of Locked On Stars, I just mentioned it in the last ad read, but wish I could, talk about the Houston Astros losing in the World Series. Me being a Texas Rangers fan, love to see the Houston Astros lose, especially in the World Series. Excuse me again. But congratulations to the Braves. Hats off to you on a fantastic season, fantastic win in the World Series. But that's not what we're here to talk about in this last segment of Locked On Stars. I want to talk a little bit about maybe the theme that has been established for this road trip and hopefully for the next several weeks for the Dallas Stars. And I think last night's game in Winnipeg was all about responses. And I think that hopefully that can be the theme of these next 2 games is, how do the Dallas Stars respond to fill in the blank? Dallas obviously did not get the win last night. We've said that several times. But I think the team made some huge strides in the right direction overall as a team. So Dallas goes down 1-0 in the first, right? They go down 1-0. Then Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn connect for Jamie Benn's first goal of the season. The 2 leaders of this team, Jamie Benn obviously being the captain, Tyler Seguin, alternate captain. I feel like if you ask most Stars fans, they're like, who's the leaders of this team? They say Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin. 2 guys that have been off to slow starts this season, but you see them get involved. They respond. They tie the game back up in the first period. That's huge. Dallas goes down 2-1. Rupe Hintz ties the game, evens it up on a nice breakaway goal. Unfortunately, it gets called back. Super devastating to see that happen. I think it's the right call. I hate to say it, but I think once you see the replay review, and I think the officials got that call right. As much as I would have loved to see Rupe finally get his first goal this season, and it's such a huge moment regardless, that's huge of Rupe Hintz to put that effort forth for his team, and to, barring the penalty that happened, put his team back in the game, make the game 0-0 basically, even though it was 2-2. And then after that, and that's just hockey sometimes, is you have those moments, plays get called back, and then Winnipeg kept the momentum going, and they go up 3-1, and Dallas could have easily rolled over and just let the momentum overtake them. Maybe they get the second goal late in the third period once they have the 6-on-5 advantage, but they don't do anything else. Similar to their game against Columbus last week. But they didn't do that. They kept fighting. They found a way. They responded to the adversity. And last night was a chance for Dallas to show the hockey world that, the best is still yet to come from this team. And while the best isn't here yet, it's not here yet by any means. Last night was a very, very small step in that direction to seeing the best hockey we've seen the Dallas Stars play this season. Dallas fought hard against a really, really good Winnipeg Jets team. This Winnipeg team is very, very good. Maybe some of the losses they've had this year haven't, been the best. Maybe some of their wins aren't the most impressive wins, but this is a good team. Don't misread that. I think every game I think this is the first of 4 games that we'll play against them this season that we saw last night. This is going to be a fun series to watch. This is a very good Winnipeg Jets team. And we, went toe to toe with them, came away with a point, salvaged a point in a game that maybe we should have lost, that we had to come back in. When it looked like, Dallas, it looked like they maybe weren't going to come away with a point at all. So this night was huge. And overall, I mean, you get embarrassed at home by the Ottawa Senators, and you have several days off, and you come out, you don't necessarily play the best hockey game, but you show a lot of fight, you show a lot of heart, and you come away with a point, which is huge in divisional play. Doesn't matter what division you're in, but especially in this year's Central Division, which is proving to be pretty competitive and pretty weird this year, because as of right now, Dallas and Colorado are at the same level. And Colorado is a team that many people projected to win the division and maybe even the Western Conference. So anything can happen in this division. And I think Dallas took a small step in the right direction to showing that they still have a lot of fight left in them for this season, because there's still a lot of hockey to be played. And Thursday will present another chance for Dallas to respond. How is Dallas going to respond from a heartbreaking loss that they suffered in a shootout? Can Dallas build on their offense, starting to find some rhythm? They finally scored 3 goals in regulation. It took a while, but it finally happened. That's something to build off of. And can the penalty kill play a complete game? The past 2 games against Ottawa and Winnipeg have shown some shaky play on the penalty kill from Dallas, which has been a strength for the most part this season. You clean up some of that stuff. You clean up the goalkeeping a little bit. Maybe last night's game against Winnipeg has a different result, and they have a chance to respond again in Calgary. And I cannot wait to see how the team rallies and responds against the Flames tomorrow night. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for a preview of Dallas's game versus the Calgary Flames for the second game in a 3-game road trip in Canada. And they will finish out this road trip on Sunday in Vancouver against the Canucks. But thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Now go make your second listen of the day, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Scott Cullen, who leans on his decades of fantasy hockey insight and expertise every day to help you be the expert of your fantasy league. His show is free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go give Scott a listen. Be sure to subscribe to the show, Locked On Stars. Tell your friends about the show. Leave a review if you like what you hear. It really does help me a lot. Love to get the feedback from you guys. Be sure to tell your friends about the show. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis. That's at DANELEWIS. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for another game day edition of Locked On Stars.